I'm very happy to introduce my good friend, Luz Graciela. I've known her for like 18 years, I think. And I like to tell people, and I'm sure this is true, that Luz is the world's foremost authority on two things. The petroglyphs of Panama, #1, and the Ngäbe culture and history and language. So, and she has brought this lady, this Ngäbe lady with her today, who she will introduce. And let's give them both a big welcome.
I'll introduce my friend Mitsiti Tugri. Párate, por favor. She's a promoter of language and Ngäbe culture. And I brought her today. She's going to do 2 demonstrations. One of the ritual name for a baby, and the other one of a dance. And also, I wanted her to meet the Elsa, the director of the library, because they have Ngäbe children coming here on Fridays to have classes. And she can teach them both in Ngäbe and in Spanish at the same time. And last week, one of the audience said that they would like classes for adults too, because she has Ngäbe workers that can only sign their name, but they don't know to read and write. So Elsa is going to ask the board of directors of the library if they can hire her for doing that for adults, and also to help the children. Well, yeah. The greeting in Ngäbe is "Como quindere?" What did you dream? That's the greeting. And if it's somebody that you trust, you will tell them your dreams. But if it is somebody that you don't trust, you will say "Ñatole." No. And since I trust my hamarogo, which means friend, Penny, I would tell you that I had a dream last night that I was blowing the conch shell, which is used in the Ngäbe culture for inviting people, convoking people, and that you were going to pay attention with what I'm going to present today. That was my dream.
Do something else for Luigi?
Well, maybe we can do the dance. Vamos a hacer el hegi. ¿Puedes poner la bolsa aquí? Ah, no, aquí tienes. Hegi is one of the traditional dances, and it's a string of people, and there's a leader, and then the leader shakes the rattle, but then he will say 1, and then people will stamp 1 with the right foot. And with the left hand, it's on the shoulder of the other person. And then we're going to go around. If you want to join the string, you can dance also.
Este es el llamado al hegi. Este es para llamar a la gente.
The rattle is to call people to dance. So she's calling you to dance also.
Esta es la preparación para la danza.
And that's the preparation for the dance. Yeah, sigue. Vamos a invitar a Mara. Mara. Lo tienes que decir uno. Ignoré. Amara, detrás de mí.
Lo que quiera.
Ajá. Vamos a dar la vuelta por allá, por allá. Tienes que poner tu mano izquierda aquí. Ahora cambias a 2. Vamos por allá, por allá, por allá, por allá.
Y también cantamos, diga.
Ah. She says that you can also sing. ¿Tú quieres cantar?
Hegi, 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 hegi. Vamos más rápido. Hegi, hegi, hegi.
Pero coge para atrás, coge para atrás.
Ahora vamos para atrás.
No, para allá, para allá, para allá.
Para la misma.
2. Ball is number 2, so now we have to do 2 sets.
When they do the steps, they also say that they're killing frogs because they're. No, 3. One more, 3. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
You got the computer?
The computer went to the without.
Oh,
You will have to talk without the computer.
okay.
How do you do it?
Okay.
Entrando en certificado.
Yeah. Well, there was a change in the name of the, they were used to be called by me, but then it changed to Ngäbe. And that occurred in 1991 when I was director of Indigenous Policy at the Ministry of Government of the Republic of Panama. There was a law after the change of government that required that that position should be held by an anthropologist. And the anthropologists in Panama City were traumatized by the US invasion, and nobody wanted to do that. So they called on me, and I said, okay, I'll go. So I had to travel every week. I would leave on Sunday night to be there on Monday morning, and then I would stay until Thursday when,
Keep speaking.
okay, until Thursday when I would attend the board of directors of the Ministry of Environment, because many of the forested areas in Panama are in indigenous lands. And I had to represent the indigenous people in that board of directors. And then I would come to Chiriquí, and over here I would, in the house that the Indians have in, it's called the Casa del Indio, the house of the indigenous people, by the old hospital here in the Bay. And there I would have sort of an office with, and I would take care of people on the western part of Panama. And that included the Ngäbe, the Bribri, the Naso, and the Naso used to be called Deribes, who are here on the western side of Panama. And when I was in Panama City, I would attend the Gunas and the Embera and Wognan, who are on the eastern part of Panama. And it was a very tiresome job doing that every week. And when it came in January, I was so tired, I told my boss, who was the vice president of the Republic, Ricardo Canceron, I said, I am too tired, I cannot continue. And he says, please stay until April, because in April, the Christian Democrats are coming out of the government, and then you can you can resign, and then we'll appoint whoever you recommend. I recommended a Guna lawyer to take care of the office, and they appointed her. So the change, the first draft of the United Nations Human Rights for Indigenous People came in 1991 when I was in 1990. And then I sent it to all of the congresses. The congresses, the general congresses, are the maximum authority in the comarcas. And they all, the first thing, only with the draft, they decided one of the articles, Article 13 in that Human Rights of the Indigenous People, says that they have the right to be called by their own names, not by the names that imperialistic people assign them. And so that's when the change came from why me to Ngäbe. And Ngäbe means, in the Andean languages, means my woman, in the Quichua that is spoken in the Andean countries, part of Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Chile. And in the 1990s, in Ecuador, they discovered a mummy of a frozen girl that had been sacrificed to the sun. And then when they did the DNA study, they discovered that her father was Ngäbe. So maybe that Ngäbe, or the Spaniards the Spaniards used to change words from one country to another. Maybe that man brought that name that says, "Why me, my woman?" And he had a child with a Quechua woman. Well, then the Ngäbe are a rainforest group. They're classified as a rainforest group. And the language of the Ngäbe and the Guna come from the Macro-Chibcha language, just as Spanish, French, Italian come from the Romans. The languages of the Ngäbe and the Guma and the Cabecar in Costa Rica come from the Macro-Chibcha proto-language. And there are genetic studies that were done by genetists from the Autonomous University of Chiriquí, where I work, Oriana Batista, genetists from the Smithsonian Tropical Institute in Panama City, genetists from the University of Panama, Tomas Arias, and genetists from the Gorgas Memorial Lab, the lab that is doing now the test for the COVID-19. And what they used for that exam was the root of hairs of women, 46 Ngäbe women and 23 Ngäbe Guna women. The mitochondrial DNA, only women have it. Men do not have mitochondrial DNA. And that's why they use the roots of hair of these women. So they put it in a centrifugal spinner to dissolve the order of the genes. You know that the chain of the DNA is like cross ladders. Every time that a gene moves from one position to another in the ladder, it means 9,300 to 10,000 years of separation, of genetic separation. So in that study, after they put it in the centrifugal spinner and the genes got together again, they compared those genes of the Ngäbe and the Guna women with genes of Nushanul Eskimos in Alaska and Mapuche Indians in Chile. And all those groups had what it's called the Mongol genes, because they came from Mongolia. They crossed from Asia to this continent in America. And this is reflected physically in their bodies, these genes. When a child is born that has these Mongol spots, it's over here on top of the nalguitas, on top of the buttocks, or around here. I have taken photographs of my son, my daughter, and my 4 grandchildren, and they were all born with the Mongol spot. And here in Chiriquí, they call the Mongol spot hagua. Hagua is a fruit. When it's green, they use the juice of that fruit for body painting. That's what the Guna women use for their nose, the Emberas for their bodies, and the Ngäbes also use it for body painting for some of their dances and games. And it disappears when the child is 2 years old. It disappears. It doesn't, there's no, and people deny it. I have had students, I would ask students, ask your mother if you were born with a Mongol spot. And those who did not want to recognize that they had indigenous genes would would say, no, we didn't have it. And that's why I take photographs, so that my children and my grandchildren will know that they had it and cannot deny that they do not have indigenous genes. The other physical effect of that gene is that the indigenous people metabolize alcohol different from blacks and whites. Black and white people metabolize alcohol through the liver and then die of cirrhosis or cancer of the liver. But the Ngäbe and the Asian people of Asiatic origins, they metabolize going through the upper gums, the veins in the upper gums. And the alcohol, it's a faster effect. It goes right to the veins, to these veins that we have on the sides, and it goes to the brain. And in Spanish they say that the huma, the drunkenness, is fast because it hits you right away. And also the cheeks will get red. I had a Japanese classmate when I was doing my master's and PhD at the University of Florida in Gainesville. And Choco Saito in a social linguistic class said, oh, when a man is drunk in Japan and he's singing karaoke, we will not tell him you're drunk. We would say, your cheeks are red. Your cheeks are red. Get down. Stop singing. Your cheeks are red. Out of respect, they will not tell him you're drunk. They will say, your cheeks are red. And the other physical sign of this gene, Asian gene, I will show you. I can put my hands forward like that, and I can turn my elbows like this forward. And if you have that gene, you will be able to do that. If you don't have the Asian gene, you will not be able to move your elbow, switch it forward. And also, that gene, when one stands, you can push your leg back like that. You stand with the knee, pull back like that, so that's a reflection of that gene. So, well, the study of the mitochondrial DNA also revealed that the Ngäbe and the Guna have been here in this part of Central America 9,300 years. And that the Ngäbe, the Guna, and the Cabeca in Costa Rica. And they have been a long, long time here. And later on, they separated linguistically. And in anthropology, there's a method, a mathematical procedure to measure how long the languages have been separated. And it's called glottochronology. Glotto from Latin language, and chronology from time. So I did that process of glottochronology, comparing the two languages of the Ngäbe and the Guna. And there are 8 words that are still the same, both linguistically, phonologically, and phonemically. They sound alike and they mean the same. And I use a method with the base vocabulary. The base vocabulary of any language includes parts of the body, it includes animals, it includes artifacts of the region in which the people live, and it includes numbers. And the 8 languages, for example, when we see this said bo, means 2 in Ngäbe, and in Guna it's also bo. And here in Chiriquí, Spanish-speaking people, when the bananas come together and the plantains are together, they call them boboletos. They are bananas, 2 bananas in one. And another word that they have the same is for fish. In Ngäbe it's gua with a G, and in Guna it's wa without the G, but it sounds alike. And another word is for mouth, kaya, in Ngäbe, no, ¿cómo es que es la de la boca? La palabra cada. In Ngäbe and in Guna is kaya. So they sound more or less the name. And the animal, an animal that in Ngäbe is mole and in Kula is moli, is the tapir, a huge animal. So if they were here 4,300 years ago, and then when you do the calculation, 19% of the base vocabulary, then you subtract that from the time that they have been here. So they have been here, the language separation came around 4,500 years after they were here. And the Gunas stayed on the east of Panama and the Ngäbe west of Panama. And the Ngäbe represents 62% of all the indigenous population in Panama. And they are mainly in the comarca, Ngäbe Buglé, but they are also in the provinces of Bocas del Toro, Chiriquí, Veraguas, Herrera, Los Santos. They're also in eastern Panama, Coclé. In the 2010 census, they were not by auto-identification. They had to identify themselves. They were not in Darien. In Darien are the Emberas and the Waunan. So it's a long time that they have been here. And the comarca was created. The first draft for the comarca has been going on for a long time. But it finally approved in 2010 was finally approved, the comarca for them. And outside is a book, that has the law of the comarca. It also has the law for bilingual, bicultural education. It has the law for the natural resources in the comarca. Well, and if any of you is interested, it's outside for $5. And then also the comarca has a general congress, and it has 3 regions. The flag of the comarca is, this is the one for $5, that is the law, all the laws in the comarca. And then this is a Spanish novel, a grammar that I proposed to Elsa, that City uses it for teaching language and culture. And the other thing is that the law of the Gunas authorizes the Ministry of Government to pay a salary to the general chief, to the regional chief, to the local chief, and then the representatives and the deputies for the comarca are by national election, and the mayors too. They can vote for elections. One of the deputies that I interviewed at one time for the National Assembly, he said that to be elected, you need the approval of the Mamachi movement. Mamachi is a revival movement. In anthropology, it's called a revival. And in the 22nd of September in 1968, Adelia Bejerano, she was another woman, and her name in Ngäbe is Besigo. She was from the area of Soloy, and she had a vision of the Virgin Mary and Jesus Christ. And in that vision, both the Mary and Jesus Christ told her that they couldn't marry Latinos, they shouldn't go to school, they shouldn't register their names in the National Registry of Panama. They had to use a special alphabet that she gave them the signs for that alphabet. And well, there were a lot of prohibitions. You cannot, you have to you cannot work on Saturdays and Sundays. And that's one of the reasons why Philip Young, a U.S. anthropologist who did his PhD with the Ngäbe when he was in the military here in Panama, Philip Young says that the reason for the movement, a revival movement like that, was because the banana companies forbade the Ngäbe people who worked for them from going off when they wanted to plant crops or harvest crops. They would just leave. And then the bananas forbade them. You cannot do that. You have to stay here working. And so Philip Young says that that movement arose because of the provision of the banana company, that they couldn't leave just like that. And one of the rituals that Mitsiti is going to demonstrate to you, a banana worker who was the brother of my first Ngäbe student in the College of Agriculture, he could not leave the banana companies. He had a baby boy, and he wanted his paternal grandmother to give the ritual name to the baby and a ritual ceremony. So since he could not leave the bananas, he waited until it was Holy Week when they would give him vacation. And then he came, and they invited me to that ceremony. It's called Bromong. Bromong means lazy, a person that's lazy. And City is going to show you the Bromong.
¿Lo van a hacer?
Sí, vas a usar ese, no vas a usar el quimo. Y when I was invited, they woke me up at 4 in the morning, and they said, in the ritual house, the women sit on this quimo. Quimongo is called, the plant is called quimo, but the leaves are called quimo. And they sat me on one of those leaves, and then the grandmother, the paternal grandmother of the baby, came and ya puedes demostrar. ¿A quién vas a coger?
Vamos a parar.
No, hácelo en la silla. Hácelo sentado. Al señor yo le dije ya que él va a ser el demostrador. I told her that you're going to be the demonstrator.
Imaginémonos que tiene agua.
Yeah, imagine that she's sprinkling water on your back so that you're not lazy. She's going to pat you on the back with the paddle.
Tiene que ponerse de pie.
She said you have to stand up. That's so that you are not lazy. Or sleepy, or that you like to sleep too much.
Solo a los varones.
Only for the men. She says the ritual only for men, not for women. So she's going to go about.
Ya está curada de la pereza.
Yeah, that's to cure you of being lazy. Acá hay otro señor, acá, estos dos.
Ya no va a dormir mucho.
You're not going to sleep late now.
Él va a tener fuerza.
You're going to be strong. You're going to be strong because in that ritual, at the end, the father of the baby had to catch
Para que sea trabajador.
a hummingbird so that you are a good worker. And at the end, they gave the baby the heart of the hummingbird. And the hummingbird is like a sacred animal for the Ngäbe. And so that it will have these, you know that hummingbirds are always flying, so that it will have the energy of the hummingbird and be very active and a good worker. And after they did that to the baby boy, then the grandmother went outside. The men were sitting outside on tree logs. And she did that what she did to all of the men here. The grandmother went and pat him on the back and sprinkled them. The water had been in a calabash at night, taking the night dew. So then ¿ya le hiciste al señor que está filmando? El que está filmando le hiciste.
¿Faltó?
Sí.
No, sí, ya yo le hice.
Sí. No,
¿Al
aquel.
señor? Sí.
Bueno. So now you're going to be good workers and not be sleep and get early at 4 in the morning. The other thing is that the Ngäbe celebrate their New Year on the 22nd of September, which is the time when Mary and Jesus appeared to Besigo, and that's their New Year. And in the PowerPoint, I had a photograph of 2018 of the Mama Chi movement. It's called, Mary is called Mama Chi, and Jesus is called Dada, Dada Jesus. And then they celebrate their New Year on the 22nd of September. And, but of course, many people in the comarca are Christians now, and they also they celebrate the Christmas and other Christian rituals. Other thing that is related to them physically is as rainforest people. And this is a study by a U.S. anthropologist, Emilio Moran, from the University of Colorado. And he has an anthropology book that is called Ecological Anthropology. And he says that rainforest people have 3 adaptations to the environment. Warfare among the other groups, and then they also have a killing of a female, and female infanticide. It's another characteristic of rainforest indigenous groups. And the third is they move fishing of their villages. They're constantly moving to other places. The mosquitoes from Honduras, Nicaragua, Belize, they invaded the territory of the Ngäbe many times and had warfare with them, including the mosquitoes have a war dance. And the mosquitoes kidnapped 2 Ngäbe boys and took them with them. And they raised them to be spies. And then they returned them again to the Ngäbe. And one of the Ngäbe diviners suspected that one of the boys, Midi Chali, was a spy for the mosquitoes. So to prove that, he told Midi to go to the Caribbean side, and if he saw boats floating in the Caribbean Sea like leaves, to let him know, because those were the mosquitoes coming. And Midi Chali did not tell him. So he says, well, I'm going to go myself and see. And when he went to the Caribbean side, the Cricamola River, he saw the boats of the mosquitoes, mosigis is called in Ngäbe, full of mangrove sticks. And so he went back and told the Ngäbe people, we are going to kill them the same that they were going to do with us with those mangrove sticks. We're going to break their heads. And the ethnohistory says that it is believed that he made the mosquitoes to fall asleep. So they went at night, and the Ngäbe took the mangrove sticks and beat the head of all the sleeping mosquitoes and killed them. And this is registered. This defeat is called the greatest feat that the Ngäbe have ever had in warfare against another indigenous group. And the mosquitoes also attacked David, Tole in eastern Chiriquí. They attacked Bugaba, and they also went to Veraguas, Cañazas, and attacked the Indians there. But the story of Midi Chali says that it was not the mosquitoes that did those attacks of the Spanish, that it was Ngäbe people who were acting like the mosquitoes because Mili Chali taught them how to do it. So the archives of the Indies in Spain have a record for Panama that was done by a Spanish priest that they attacked Remedios, burned Remedios, took all the sacred vessels from the church because it was an attack to the Spaniards now, the Ngäbe against the Spaniards. And the governor of Veraguas wrote an account of that. So it's not only an oral ethnohistory, but it's also a written record about that attack that occurred. What else? I had in the PowerPoint a diagram from a U.S. anthropologist, Yehudi Cohen. He's a Jewish anthropologist, and he has a very good book that is called Man in Adaptation, the Cultural Present. And he says that all groups on Earth, human groups, adapt mainly to their environment in which they are. And mainly technology and political organization are the principal adaptations, but then there are a whole bubble of circles on that diagram that include language, ritual, justice, religion, cognition. And cognition includes the names of plants and animals that group classifies and gives. And I participated in a research, multidisciplinary research, that included the University of Panama, included UNACHI, and it included Swedish and botanist Finn Sandberg and his British student Susan Levy. And Sandberg wanted to know if the Ngäbes were using contraceptive plants. The women were using contraceptive plants. And the head of the pharmacological college in the University of Panama called me, Mahavir Gupta. He passed away last year of the COVID. And Mahavir said, Luz, since you have Ngäbe students, please get me 2 of your male students to participate in this research, and that they consult the medicine men or women in their communities and see what plants they are using. So I asked Santiago Guerra and Roger Septimo, who's now the director of the agricultural ministry in the Comarca, and they would go on their times that they had vacation periods. We work with 4 communities here in the Comarca, and we work with 2 communities in Bocas del Toro and Valle Riscón. They collected 286 plants, and the plants were pressed, and a sample remained in the herbarium here in UNACHI, and the other sample was sent to Panama. And the scientific name of the plant was sent to a data bank in the University of Chicago. And Chicago would send back all the contents that the plant had and for what they were good. One of the researchers was an assistant of the pharmacology college in Panama, and he did his master's thesis with the plants that they use for rashes, skin rashes. And they were 15 plants that were used for skin rashes, and he tested them out, and they're effective. They cure the skin rashes. And then we couldn't get plants that were used for women for contraception because there's a taboo, a language taboo, that a man cannot know what the women are using. So when they collected plants that were being used by women, they just put women ailments, women ailments, women ailments, and didn't specify what they were for. So we really don't know. We would probably, if the research is done again, we would have to use female students to do the inventory. And this was the results were published in Ireland in a journal of pharmacology. And there are, in the Caribbean side, the Boca side, in the two places, they were plants used for dreams. And there are 7 things of dreams, very much like the Freudian concept that dreams are signs of illness. If you're being bitten in your dream, you're being bitten by a bee. If you're in jail, if a person touches you while you're dreaming, if a snake bites you, well, seven different things. And they considered those as signs of illness. There were also 2 plants on the Boca side that were used for witchcraft and fishing, poisons that for fishing in the rivers. And here in Chiriquí, and also in Bocas, there were plants for use for childbirth. And what the plants do is, after a woman gives birth and doesn't expel the placenta soon enough, they give her that tea so that the placenta will be expelled and not stay inside, which is a problem. Can be gangrene or other. So here in Chiriquí, they had one plant that is called for evil eye. In Spanish, it's called mal de ojo. Mara probably knows that. But the mal de ojo is not really a sickness. After a baby is born, for 6 months, the baby will have the mother's antibodies, and that will protect the child for 6 months. But if a person comes to see the baby, and the baby doesn't recognize those antibodies because it's somebody outside of his family group, then the baby will have the mal de ojo, the evil eye, fever. Will have fever, and then they will give him that to drink, that plant, for the fever, to reduce the fever. But also you have to put on the baby urinated clothing or sweated clothing of the person that you think that was the one who caused the evil eye. And then the baby will recognize the antibodies in the urine and in the sweat, and will develop copies of the antibodies, and will be cured of the fever. Another thing that they had for witchcraft is used the juice of the cacao fruit from which chocolate is made. The juice of the pulp is thrown on the eyes of a person that has been witchcraft, that you suspect that to throw the demons away, because they believe that the eye, evilness comes through the eyes. So the cacao, that is the sacred fruit, the juice of that fruit will cure that person and throw the demons away, just like in the Bible that Jesus would throw the demons away. And they do that with the cacao juice. The cacao juice is also used for as a beverage to take away sleep. It's worse than coffee. Worse than Coca-Cola. And the cacao that they make is made out of without milk and without sugar. And when I would take biology or medical students to Quebradahuavo, to the Association of Ngäbe Women, I would ask Emilia Santos to come and talk to the students what plants she uses. And when it was biology or medical students, she would make cacao for them. And she would say, if you drink this type of cacao, your memory will be, you will memorize all those things that you have to do in medicine and in biology. So the students would go with their calabash bowl, and she would pour some of that cacao drink. At one time, biology students drank so much of that they couldn't sleep. It was 4 in the morning, and they were walking up and down the road because they couldn't sleep. It had had an effect on them. Another thing in the ethnohistory, and that Jehudi Cohen says in his diagram that all human groups have the prohibition of incest, with whom you can marry, with whom you could have relations, sexual relations. But in the Ngäbe, the prohibition is of the mother with her sons. There is no prohibition of the man with his female relatives. And when I was director of Indian policy in the Ministry of Government, the chaplain of UNACHI called me, Father Bernardo Foschini, who would also come here to Boquete sometimes to celebrate Mass. And he said, Luz, we have to go to the hospital. The Mexican pediatrician there, she wants you to talk to the family group of this 3-year-old baby girl who was penetrated by her grandfather and destroyed her vagina. That child would never, when she grew up, she would never be able to have children. And so I talked to the family group. I explained to them that even though it's allowed in the Ngäbe for men to have relations with female relatives, that all the dangers that come from that. And then a man stood up, another man stood up. Well, I want you to tell people in Costa Rica and Panama not to call us parientes, kinsmen, or because I am not related to any Latino, and I don't want them to call me parientes. And I said, okay, I will tell the people not to call you parientes. And in the ethnohistory, it's a constitutionary law of the prohibition of incest. It's called the history of the man and the moon. Evia, the mother was a famous singer and dancer. And when she went to the chicherias, to the parties, she would fall madly in love with 2 men. One was dressed in gold with a golden cane, and the other one was dressed in silver with a silver cane. And I already warned this man here, whenever she liked one of those men, she would step on their toes, and that's a sign that you like that person. I warned him that I was going to do that. So, in the chicherias, in the parties, the other women would say, Evia, you cannot do that. Those are your sons. And she says, oh no, I left them by the fireplace with the parents, taking care of them. And so the 4th time, number 4 is the number of plenitude in all the indigenous language in this continent. It's not 7 like in the Judeo-Christian Bible. It's number 4. So then the women said, no, don't do that. So the 4th time, she didn't go to the party. She stood by the roadside to see if those men came out of her house, and they did. The man dressed in gold and the man dressed in silver. So then she didn't go to the party. She decided to go back home, and with her fingers and her toes, she engraved all the petroglyphs on the planet Earth. Evia represents the planet Earth. And in the book that I published of petroglyphs in Chiriquí, a rock art in Chiriquí, there's this story, and then there's also the most famous drawings here in Chiriquí. The most famous rock art in Boquete is the Piedra Pintada de Caldera, which is part of the Boquete district. And there is a rock that on the west side has what is called the face of the sun. And then it's followed by 9 heads. They look like heads, big heads, that are lunar and solar calendars. At one time, a US anthropology student asked me to take her there, and also a student from the University of Panama in Veraguas. So I went with them at sundown, or before sundown, and it was really impressive. The last ray of sun fell exactly on the left eye of the face of the sun. And that's what we went in June for the solstice of June, which passed last month, the 23rd of June. And it was really impressive to see that light bulb on that eye, the left eye, and the right eye is this solstice in December, 22nd, 23rd December. The nose of the face of the sun is the east line, and the mouth is the equinox that occurs in March and in September. And a Panamanian engineer that graduated from the College of Engineers, the University of Technological University of Panama, and his wife is from Chiriquí, but he's from Los Santos. And in the area where he comes from, Los Santos, there are petroglyphs. So he wanted to interpret, his interpretation of the Piedra Pintada Caldera is that they're what look like heads are lunar and solar calendars. What look like horns on top of the heads, those are the lunar months. And you can read them from right to left and then from left to right, and they will give you 12 months in a year. And also, the shape of the head is the way that the sun appears in the horizon in the mornings or when it sets at night. And I can see that in my own house in David. The sun sometimes comes out, you can see it on the front window, and other times on the side window, and then later on in the back yard. And the reason he says this, that they were agricultural people, and they needed to have a calendar to program their activities. When Karen Holmberg came, she rented Peggy's house. Karen is a U.S. anthropologist. She did her PhD research here, digging in sites, rock art sites around them to see what came out, ceramics, lithics. And Karen also had an instrument, a geodesical instrument that would measure the relation of the Piedra Pintada Caldera with the artillery ridge here that you can see, the artillery ridge that was used by the U.S. Army in the Second World War to have artillery there. And the distance from that Piedra Pintada to the Baru volcano. And also there is a split, huge rock close to the rock art. And the people who are metaphysical in Chiriquí, they say that if you cross that split rock, the passageway to that tree, you're entering into another metaphysical frame. And there's a small stream behind that side, and when I take students there, novice students will usually go and wash your face because they consider that water is sacred. And the other thing that I wanted to mention about plants, and that's why I brought the chemo, aside from being used for women to sit, you can eat the fruit of that plant. I have that in my backyard, and when the leaf is new, you can make strings for making hats. The new leaf will have little chlorophyll on the tips, but if you let it in the sun and dry, it will be all white, and then you can make thread, or you can weave bags, the crown. And then the people, I eat the stamens of the fruit. They call them Indigenous Spaghettis. They're like strings. I eat that, and usually in breakfast with fruit juice and yogurt and other things. I put those stamens there and eat them, and they're edible. The root of that palm is also edible. And also after the fruit, the stamens fall and the pollen falls, it will have red berries, and though you can eat the little red berries also. Another plant that they use for making bags, like this one, it's a very strong. It's related. It's called Pita, They also eat the fruit of the pita. It's related to the pineapple. But the leaves of the pita, it has huge leaves, and they will scrape the chlorophyll, the green part, with a blade that is made out of a cane. It's not a metal knife, it's a cane. And then they will scrape the chlorophyll. They will also twine, make strings, and they can make big bags like that one or bigger than that. And the bags can be used for a cradle for a baby, and they can be used for harvesting the green bananas or the maniacs, which are their principal staples. And then the Germans technical cooperation, they had a 10-year project with 4 communities in the comarca. And they also sponsored 4 chemical students of UNACHI to use natural dyes. The Ngäbe women had become accustomed to buying German chemical dyes at the drugstores. And so they taught these students and also the Association of Ngäbe Women to rescue all the dyes, natural dyes that they had. So these 4 chemistry students did their research for their thesis with those plants. Well, my last recommendations are that if you go to a rock art site, you can trace, or you can photograph, you can trace the design. And I also ask the students to do artifacts. And I would do that because when I was in Tallahassee for 1 quarter, I lived with Donna Fishner, an anthropology student, and she had a fantastic artistic vein. And Donna took a tracing of a petroglyph that her boyfriend had done when he was in the peninsula of Valiente in Bocas del Toro, and he gave her that tracing of the petroglyph. And she says, Luz, this looks like your name, your light, and for me this is the sun. So she made a beautiful wall rock. I still have it, rock hanging. And I would ask students to make something. At one time when we took people with Milagros who spoke to you last week, we went to the Meseta de Chorcha, and there was a U.S. lady in that group, and she did another method of tracing the art is you take a newspaper, the non-printed paper, and you can rub green leaves. You take leaves and you rub it, and the shadow will show. And that lady, I remember, she took that paper and said, I'm going to frame this. I believe she did. And because she was caring for it all along during the field trip. But also, when you go to Volcán, there's a restaurant there called Cerro Brujo, like the site where Olga Linares did her archaeology in Cerro Brujo in Almirante. And when they are in season, she will have the Indigenous Spaghettis, and she will have mashed green bananas, and she has a menu. Her recipe book in Ngäbe and in Spanish, it's called El Fogón de Mis Amores. Her name is Patricia Miranda Allen. She's from Bugaba. That book won a prize in a gourmet contest in France, and she is rated as a very good chef. And she's from Bugaba, but her restaurant is in Volcán. And the last recommendation that I was making was that what I told Elsa, that she can consult with the board of directors of the library if Mid-City can come and teach classes in Ngäbe and Spanish to the Ngäbe children that are coming from Alto Quil here on Fridays. And last week there was a lady in the group that asked Milagros that she has laborers that can only sign their name, but they cannot read and write. So that she can also have classes for those type of people, Ngäbe people, that are working here. Any questions?
I have a question. Does this work?
Yeah, yes.
I'm interested in the comarca, the Ngäbe comarca. Does it cross over the Costa Rica border?
No, it doesn't cross the Costa Rica border, but Costa Rica has laws now to protect the Ngäbe that go for coffee.
Yes, because I understand that the Ngäbe can cross the border
Yes.
without, they don't have passports, most of them.
No.
So they can cross the border.
There's an agreement, yes. Mid-City has a cousin that is already in Renacimiento. She already harvested here, and she is now in Renacimiento, and she's ready to cross.
The other question about the comarca I have is, I come from a place that has many Indian reservations, and they're very autonomous. For example, if a crime is committed on an Indian reservation, the Indian law prevails, the Indian court system, the Indian judges. Is that true with the Ngäbe comarca here?
It's a dual system. It has both the Panamanian system and the Ngäbe traditional system. And it's respected both ways. They have their own police here, the Bugodai, los policías Bugodai, and their traditional jail, it's a lock that has girdles, and they put it's a double lock that has holes. Then they put the legs of the offender, and yes, but it's dual. It's a dual system because the government of Panama pays the salary for all the chiefs, and also they can elect representatives and deputies to the National Assembly. So that's one of the problems, I think, that when it's convenient for one thing, they go to one system. When it's convenient for another thing, then they go to the other system. So they go back and forth from one system to another. I was in Mississippi teaching at the college of, it was in Starkville, Mississippi, and Dr. Peterson, who was my sponsor with the an exchange program that the U.S. Embassy had, and an Argentinian professor that he sent him to Argentina, and then he invited me to come. And he took me to the Choctaw Reserve, and I proposed that should be here in Panama. The Choctaw have 4 factories. They pay lower prices. 60% of the laborers are Choctaw Indians, but the other 40% can be poor blacks or poor whites that live close to them. And I think that is fabulous. They had a factory for women that would make Christmas cards. Well, that would go broken now because now there's WhatsApp and internet instead of Christmas cards. But then they also did all the electrical work for cars. Mitsubishi, Toyota, Ford, for cars and trains. And those were factories for men. And they had color codes for the wires. So you would see an Indian man, usually those were the factories for men. You would see an Indian man making all the wiring for cars, and they would sell that to the factories of cars. Very, very good project.
Thank you, so interesting. What I was wondering about is here in Boquete, here in Boquete, we see the wonderful Ngäbe families and the mothers with those precious little children. So a little bit about the ones we see here, but also a little bit about the beautiful dress, the colors and all, because I understand that has meaning. I know, I'm sorry.
Mid-City did this dress for me. She says this is the traditional. In the past, it was 2 colors. Now they make them 1 color like she's wearing. But in the past, and this is the traditional necklace for the women. The other necklaces that you see, the colors that the men wear, I have was formerly a student, now it's a colleague. He did his master's degree in France, and his PhD degree in Spain with the Catalanes, and he speaks 5 languages now: Ngäbe, Spanish, English, French, and Catalan. He makes those big colors, beautiful. And that's one thing that also I had in the PowerPoint. The Ngäbe dode, you see these triangles. They're called Ngäbe dode, sewn or made by Ngäbe. And the triangle is their traditional decoration in pants, in shirts, in dresses, in hats, in bags, and see, she had it there. She makes those bags too. Yes, the triangle, and the teeth are filed also in a triangle because it's considered beautiful. I had a student, another student, and she said her grandmother filed her teeth. And she didn't like it. She wanted to go to the dentistry college in the University of Panama so that they would level her teeth again because she didn't like those pointed teeth. But the Cholos Coclesanos, where I did my research in the Indio River, they also filed their teeth as a sign of beauty.
Is it true that your Nagua dress was introduced by the missionaries? And I had heard that it was introduced by the missionaries because the Ngäbe women were topless, like some of the Hunan women.
Guna. Well, maybe, but maybe. The hierarchy changed when the Spaniards came. The hierarchy at the top were the owners of cattle, and the store owners, or the owners of pigs also. And the store owners would sell mainly flour, wheat, and they would sell oil, and they would sell cloth. And the traditional dress of the Kukwa, who are in Cocle, and they are also of Ngäbe ancestry, they have bar cloth for their dresses, painted beautiful, and they have a Kukwa dance. And the Ngäbe women that I have had contact with, they use bar cloth, the red bar cloth. There's a white bar cloth and a red bar cloth. They use the red bar cloth as a sanitary napkin, and you can wash it and then use it again. And not a Tampax for a sanitary napkin. So they use the red, and they also use the red bar cloth for making bags. They know how to process the bar cloth. And it's a special tree, the one for white and one for red. Yes?
Reason that the women consistently wear the traditional dress and the men do not appear to?
Well, in most indigenous culture, the most conservative is the woman, because the woman is the one who will transfer the culture to the children. And the Guna women, also, it's the woman that wears the mola, not the men. And but the Ngäbe will have, when they dance the balseria, which is a ritual game, very old. It was first reported for the Caribbean side by a Belgian priest, and he called it the Juego de Palos, the game of sticks. And in the 16th century, very old, he saw that. And the Debali, the Philip Young, the U.S. anthropologist that did his thesis here with the Ngäbe, Philip wrote several articles. The Debali is the name for your ritual brother. And one ritual brother invites another ritual brother to play that game. And one stands, Mitziti paraten, por favor, y levántate la falda. It's only by men. You have to, the balsa wood has to strike the muscle there on the leg. and it's only for men. And so there's another U.S. anthropologist, John Board, who also did his thesis. He was a student of Philip Young. And John Board has a beautiful photograph of the man that is blowing the flute for the dance. And it looks like if he was dancing. And so the one brother, there's a certain distance that you have to throw. It's with a balsa stick, which is very light, but it's pointed. So you can injure the person. I went to a curing Batseria game, and it was a school teacher, and they told me that they often injure school teachers because school teachers have the money to invite people and pay the food and the drinks for the curing ceremony, which is last 4 days. The women in a Batseria, the ones that I have seen, they do something that is done by the Amazonic groups, and they pull their hair, and I would pull her hair down, and she would pull my hair down until you bend, and they do that at the Batseria, the women. But it's not considered. It's more common of Amazonian groups that thing that women do, the pulling of the hair.
Are there any more questions?
Mara.
Oh, we got one more question, and then we'll cut it off.
What's the meaning of bugle?
Oh, thanks. That's a very good question, Mara. The Bugle are a minority group. They're also called Bokota. And they are at the tip where in the mountains mainly, and they're shorter. The Ngäbes are taller, but many Bugle women marry Ngäbe men because they say that the Ngäbe men go out more to work, salarial, to get a salary and buy her things. So I have had students that know both languages. It's a different language, totally. And the interesting thing is that all the songs are in Bugle, they're not in Ngäbe. Blas Quintero, who's the compiler for those books, the Panamanian anthropologies, he's doing his master's thesis translating, he knows Bugle, he's translating the songs to Ngäbe so that the Ngäbe people know what they're singing, because the songs are in Bugle. Also, there are many toponyms, names of places in the province of, in the Los Santos Peninsula. There's a place called Guararé, and a famous song in Panama. Vamos pa Guararé, a bailar el chucu chucu. But Guararé is a Ngäbe word, and it comes from a ritual that they make for boys also. When there are thunder and lightning, they spear their ears with the spine of a stingray, so that they will not be affected by lightning. Many people die in the comarca from lightning. And then they have a ritual for a house. They cannot live there anymore. They consider that it has been intoxicated, toxic, and they will move to another place. But John Board, the one who also took the picture of them on blowing the fruit, he recorded a ritual for when that happens, when a house is struck by lightning, and then they do a special ritual. Also, when there is an earthquake, they believe that it's Eria, the woman that was always married in love with the man dressed in gold and silver, that her sons threw her out of the earth to the abyss. But when she wants to come back to the earth in a ladder, and when she's climbing up, that's when the earthquake. And when there's an earthquake, a Ngäbe girl will bite a rock. And when there's an earthquake, a boy will buy a machete, a knife, so that their teeth will not fall. their primary teeth, the first teeth that we lose, they throw them into a pineapple plant so that they will grow strong.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.